Hello, welcome back to Coffee Break, everyone. My name is Faith Jacobs, and I'm your host. And joining me today are two incredible gentlemen. They're amazing actors. They're some of the kindest, funniest, and talented people I've had the pleasure to work with for about 4 years at this point. I adore them, I respect them, and I could sing their praises all day. But for now, please join me in welcoming Jack Morby and John Comby to the show. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you
Thank
for
you for
having
having
us.
us.
Of course.
Oh, scary.
I feel very, I feel very, how can I say, like, not shown up by that intro, but I feel like I need to fill it in now. I'm like, oh god, I've been praised too much. I must ratify this somehow.
So,
I think you should carry on, to be honest with you.
so
More.
More.
yes, give us more praise. There you go. If each of you would start us off one at a time and introduce yourselves, maybe tell us something brief and fun about yourselves and who you voice on the show to Nanak Brotherhood, then we'll dive right into our topics of discussion and questions for today.
John, you may go first.
Oh, thank you. You got introduced first, so I thought you'd go first. No, hello, I am John. I'm John Comby. I'm a general voice actor and also public historian, which is an interesting combo. I, generally, I voice Sirius. That helps. Fun fact, I have done way too much audio in my life. I think I have done now something like 8 years of almost continually making podcasts and voice stuff.
Wow.
And I've also done actual live radio broadcast. You might have once heard me all around the UK hosting the student radio chart show, but that was a long time ago.
That's
Lovely.
cool.
Me now, hello. So, hi, I'm Jack, and I voice Edgar in the show. I am an actor from England, from West Yorkshire. I'm currently out of work, but not for long. I've got nothing in the pipeline. I'm just being optimistic.
Yeah, no, you'll get stuff.
Yeah.
I believe, and
Oh,
I know,
yeah.
because you're amazing.
I was just saying to Faith before this, while you weren't here in the pre-show, while we were talking all about you, without you knowing. No, I've been out of work for the last 8 months, and I literally got a job offer last week. So
Congratulations, John. Congratulations.
So, thank you. I'm tooting my own horn, but I just wanted to I wanted to throw in the good vibes. I want to throw in the good vibes.
Yes, you guys both are going to do amazing no matter what you get. Now, we're going to jump into our discussion questions. So the first one is aimed at both of you. So back when I approached you for the roles of Edgar and Sirius respectively, back in the dark ages of 2021, what were your initial thoughts? Based on what little description was given, because I really tried to keep the series a secret, and in those early stages of your characters' introductions, what examples did you use or pull from to get into the mindset of portraying your characters?
Would you like to go first, John?
Oh, shall I go first again then, Jack?
Just shall we do it like this? Just
yes.
So we're not,
Yeah, so otherwise people might get confused with our voices, because I forgot to introduce I'm also from the UK and English. I don't sound it, but I'm from the Northwest. Jack will go, wait, what? You're from the Northwest? And you sound like that? Yes, exactly. For any Americans listening, people from the Northwest do not sound like me. It would be like someone introducing themselves, like saying they are from Seattle and talking like they're from Boston, or New York usually. But yes, I thought it was quite fun when I was first learned about Sirius and like the character, because at the time I was working in Japan as an assistant language teacher, and I was recording in my cupboard. It was a rather nice walk-in cupboard. I'd kill for that cupboard now. But no, I was thinking, I was like, no, this is a cool. I was doing some stuff for some other projects at the time, and I saw this, got approached by Faith. I was like, no, I think this is really exciting, and it's a really cool thing to get into. The one thing that I was a bit unsure about when you first approached me, I remember you originally asked Sirius with a Welsh accent.
Yes, I did, because I think in my mind, I was thinking that I wanted Sirius to sound or have a vibe very similar to Orlando Bloom in, like, Lord of the Rings. And
His accent isn't Welsh.
I
though.
know. Mind you, back then at that point, like I feel so much younger. I feel older these days, but like back then, I didn't really know. I think what it's true. It's true when they say voice directors don't know what they're looking for, and so you tried Welsh, and we didn't like that. And then I went, why don't you just? Because you did a second take. I remember in your audition, as just your regular voice, and I went, let's just go with that because you sound good. Let's just go with that.
I recommend any Americans who don't know what Welsh people sound like, by the way, to watch a series called Gavin and Stacey, which is most well known for James Corden. Least said about him, the better. But the other characters in it who are all very Welsh and have very Welsh accents and are all very lovely. But I don't think Sirius would sound very nice like this.
No, it did not. So once again, I grew up with. I couldn't quite like, and CCC, Casting Call Club does not have the best range of like diversity. It was either like it was like British general or like general British English or Welsh, and I was like, let's go with this. But Jack, what about you?
Hello. So yeah, it was nice to be asked and approached for projects. I always love helping people with their own personal projects or with just their own academic projects. Just even I was very much at one point an actor who I don't want to do things if they're not paid, but now I've become a lot more open to things because it shouldn't solely be about that. It should be about you first of all staying in practice, but also it's an art form, and I think it's important to continually be an artist even when you're not earning. It was lovely to be asked, and it was great to play a neurodiverse character because that at the time that was something I was becoming a lot more open to. So that was lovely to have picked up on that particular beat.
Yeah, would you believe that this character almost even didn't get that introduction because I almost cut that arc because the original actor who voiced Edgar couldn't do him and he couldn't voice him anymore, and Edgar was almost cut entirely from season 1 at the end. And so when you came along, you kind of randomly followed me on Twitter that one day. I was number one, very impressed by you, and number two, very nervous to approach you because I at that point I didn't do that. So like you were very much a blessing to have.
Thank you. I love helping people, especially with creative projects. It's what I do. I like to collaborate.
Yeah, and it's been amazing so far. So the second question, aimed once again at you two. So Series 1 Edgar, Jack, was a late casting, as we mentioned, and you came in during the finale of the series Sins of the Past. How does that version of Edgar compare to Series 2 Edgar in regards to playing the lead rather than a supporting role? And how has portraying him on your end of things as an actor evolved?
I assume that wasn't a question for me, but there we are.
The same
it was.
I am playing Edgar. I am Edgar squared.
You're playing Jack as Edgar.
The same will apply to you, John. Edgar, Jack, I'd like to hear from you first.
Sure. So I think he's changed a lot because when I first started recording, I found it harder to record the earlier stuff because of finding the age and the experience of him. I think he's become a lot more.
Yeah,
He's gained a maturity, but I wouldn't say he's wholly mature. That's not a defining aspect.
No, he was, when I first wrote him, I wrote him at the age of 16. So he was a 16-year-old boy who I think the character of Leroy is meeting in this very tense, and like it's beats of his life, but it's not the whole picture of his life. It's only the most intense parts of that character's life. Whereas when we jumped into Tir Nanak, I wanted you to experience Edgar at 16 all the way to, I think, when he enters adulthood.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I feel a bit more comfortable with it now, because because you've got the baggage that came before, and also just playing young is always a bit of a challenge for a slightly older actor.
My beard says otherwise. But no.
Your beard says otherwise, yes. But yeah, it's changed massively. I think there's more of a fierceness. There's less of a fun factor, which is not a bad. Which I don't mean in a bad way. I mean there was a more of a twinkle to young Edgar, whereas there's more of. He's a bit more consumed by some darkness.
Yeah, he's more. There are moments where he's lighthearted and he's joyful and he's funny and he's playful, but there are moments too where he's very much conceited and bitter, and he's fighting forces of pure inner turmoil, which we get to see a little bit at the very tail end of Sins of the Past, but not really in the way that I got to explore with this season. Now, what about you, John? Because I think right out the gate, I was re-listening to your solo episodes as Sirius. Right out the gate, he's smack dab in the middle of trauma.
Yeah, that's something. Obviously, you always take things from your own life when you're doing acting and such, and especially for Sirius, there's a lot of trauma, there's a lot of pain, and there's pain that I'd been through in my life that I'd chosen to harness for that. But then when it came a little bit later, when it came to, say, season 2, I found some of the bits really interesting, like the relationship scenes, because about a year and a half ago, whilst voicing a lot of season 2, I got into a relationship with my partner. It's all going very well. And that was like one thing that it helped me like reconsider like things like both the transformative powers of love, but also like the fear that love brings, like the fear of its loss.
Yes.
And how that can affect people, and how it makes people do different things, maybe things that aren't immediately in character for them, but also that very much are.
No, 100%. And you know what was also interesting to me was the fact that 95% of your introduction as Sirius was just you. Edgar's there, but spoilers, Edgar is in a coma.
Darn, I was going to listen to that.
So Edgar is in a coma. And when it comes to the modern era of the Chaotic Idiots project, which is something that I want to explore in this next script that I'm writing, is how that happens. But it's entirely just you. And it's so powerful that those are probably two of my favorite episodes. Is Jack's solo episode as Edgar and Gore's as Sirius, because it's really just just you guys in a scene. There are other characters around, but you both really take center stage.
Suck it, whoever voiced those other characters. Haha, we're her favorite.
Yes. I love you too. But so next question, Jack. You mentioned to me in our last time that we talked sort of in this manner that you like to choose things to help you understand the core of a character. Now, did you utilize the same process with Edgar, And if so, what were those things or that thing that you chose to help with you getting into the crux that makes Edgar who he is?
I think coming of age is a really important thing, and that's something that everybody goes through, and it's something that I like to think back on a lot, is not the moment, but the times of transitioning from one version of yourself to another. I don't quite. I'm still figuring out how to expand on that, but I think. But the thing I honed in on was all the struggles leading to strength. But even if that strength isn't always a good thing, because Edgar's not always in control.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's another thing, is the lack. I like characters who can't control something. They're always way more interesting than people who can control things.
Yes, yeah, he definitely has moments in throughout the show where everything is really out of his hands, and then he's frustrated with it. And I do like how you kind of bring that to the surface.
Yeah, cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. John, what about you? Like, what's your process as an actor, and what did you choose to utilize to help you understand Sirius outside of the script? You might have answered that a little bit, but is there anything else that maybe helped you in the thought process, or at least breaking down the character?
No, part of it is also partially in a way cheating, because when I like to look at characters, I like to look at people you know or people you've met, even for like very small like parts of them, and taking parts in of that to the performance as a whole. So either different tones or like different speaking inflections. Like people are so much like maybe a different. I think I was specifically in series 1, I was thinking of like some of my old university lecturers, and it's very specific. Like people underestimate how important like the rhythm of your speech is when you're a different person. So there's a person on TikTok who I love who does like mouth acting, and she can do all these different voices that are kind of impressions, but then she very physically changes how she's saying the words, and it shows up, and she can do all these different celebrities. It's very, very good. But I think there's an element of that in how you speak, the rhythms that people expect from your voice, and then the rhythms that they don't.
Right.
And like giving characters like that unique part of themselves, I feel like, especially when voice is one of the only things you have to connect with these characters, I think it's really important. And I think it's like very much what I thought of giving like Sirius a when developing him, like a unique voice, a unique rhythm that was his own, but also based on some people I have met in the past who shall remain nameless.
Absolutely. No, we all take little bits and pieces of the people that we meet throughout our lives, I feel, and we just kind of go, here's a buffet of things I can use later. So my next question, and this is open to both of you or either of you, I didn't really specify. So the main conflict of the story is just fighting against just about every deterrent possible: difficulty, gods, fate, forbidden relationships, trauma, and family turmoil. When reading those scenes, what's your process as far as trying to understand the material you're reading? And do you have any questions that I have yet to answer about the world itself, or even the Faust family?
I think a lot of it comes from I like to kind of ride the script a bit. I like to try and skim through and say a lot of these things without thinking too much about it. I think thinking can sometimes be a barrier, and it's best to follow instinct sometimes. So I like to sort of skim through and just very quickly speed read and say certain things before I record, and then suddenly, yes, you've got something to draw on, but you've got a feeling then when you skim it and speed read, or I like to term it surfing it.
Yeah.
You get a feeling, whereas when you record it, you get more information as you do it that helps fuel that feeling.
No, agreed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. The idea of just being able to go into like a script and read it through or surf it as Jack does. I'm a terrible surfer, so I will not do that. I will swim through it because I've fallen off my surfboard. But swimming through the script is it's very important because you get to experience trauma as the character themselves.
Right.
So, as most characters aren't going to have time to think about how they would react to a
Right.
certain thing happening. So, being able to like almost experience that in the moment, and then when it comes to recording it, going through and taking from that, I totally agree with Jack on that.
Gotcha. All right. So switching gears a little bit from the origin of when we started this and into character relationships. This is aimed at you both. Edgar and Sirius have a deeply connected relationship. They grew up together. They've been held together. And as mentioned, ultimately when Edgar ends up in the coma, Sirius still continues to love and care for him. And I love how you portray him. You're not afraid to play into Sirius's gentle personality, and in contrast, I like the way Jack, you lean into Edgar's timidness, brashness, and inner frustration. With all that said, the question for you both is, when digging into the relationship between them for your own respective performances, what's going on in the back of your minds, reading those sometimes very intimate and sometimes intense scenes?
Just pondering that one. If you want to jump
I will
in, John, go ahead.
I will jump in and say, to be honest, not much. Trying to connect emotionally with the character and how they're going through things. But again, I'm going to go back to Jack's thing of saying that sometimes thinking about things like that is boundary. But also you have to be prepared for it, because if you do too much stuff like that, too much Stanislavski, etc., it can really hurt. Reliving pain is still pain.
Right.
This is something that is why I very specifically don't like how a lot of method actors do things, and also like experience, because when you take up pain to use for a character, you are still getting hurt.
Yeah,
You are still experiencing that.
I actually more of lean into Meisner and Stella Adler are more so because voicing the character of Jacob, I'm dealing with quite a few who's very close to me in some ways and not so close to me in other ways. But a lot of my writing as an actor, I actually have to learn to step outside of that, and that was very hard for me. You actually will see, if you listen to season 1, you actually will see a difference when I stopped relying on that and pulled more from imagination.
I think it's especially the kind of, like, for me, is the idea of like something from it's just being able to like prepare with pain, and also it helps that I read stuff and I read stuff that involves conflict and stuff every single day. Lots of people are very happy historians. I am not a happy historian. So you go through lots of different things that are trauma and death, etc. Part of it is connecting to those people and their experiences, but part of it is also being able to separate yourself enough so that you know where your limits are.
Right. No, I agree. Jack?
A lot of my training as an actor, at least in the last 4 years, has been quite physical. So it's good to take time to get in the right headspace, but it's also quite beneficial to just throw yourself in and to just help generate something. So if it's quite an emotional scene, if you can imagine what the breath is like in that scene, that's what I quite like to work with breath, because then that gives your body and your voice a suggestion to follow. So if it's quite an emotional scene, there'll be a lot of deeper breaths and a lot of there could be some panting, So a lot of that happens with me is that I like to work from breath. I don't really draw a lot from my own experiences because it's never worked for me, and so I like to go from suggestion and essence and imagination, and that's exactly what I do for this.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and that's more what I was getting at. Like I will clarify for anyone listening that Chaotic Idiots enter and knock. While I use the word intimate, I do not write explicit scenes. So when I mean intimate, I mean like emotionally vulnerable moment.
Aww.
Because I can't. I have
You sweet summer child.
I have a strong limit. I have a limit and a moral and a line I won't cross as a writer because I don't feel comfortable with it. So these two characters are emotionally intimate, and they're playful, and they're flirty, and if we get to the next season, life willing, you will see them banter a little bit more and have like more lighthearted moments, as well as moments where they fight a little bit. But so that's just, it is 17 plus, but more for mature themes of disability and mental health.
Otherwise, the Spotify algorithm will not recommend us.
Yeah,
anymore.
basically. Otherwise, I get in trouble. I
Yay!
don't want that to happen.
Not worth it.
So yeah, so like I do have a limit. So that when I say intimate, it doesn't always necessarily mean explicit. Just so listeners understand. But on that, how did you read the relationship? And I don't necessarily mean like what was your interpretation of them as companions? And this is for both of you. You can both answer, you know.
Oh, Faith has come up with some hard questions, listeners. Mostly due to the fact that my brain is as empty as a piece of Swiss cheese. But more specifically, I think when I go back to thinking about a relationship like Sirius and Edgar's, I almost think of something like almost like companionship, like very much like, obviously the setting for some of it is semi-medieval, so it's that kind of medieval men, boys and boys, like connection, but also an element of servitude as well,
Right.
where like part of their love language and things has come from that start. Like they are not on the same level as people within this society, and so part of that specifically makes it like what many things that Sirius does for Edgar are service, either of his own free will, which he likes to think of them of, but also as expected by the larger society as a whole. So it is actually, in some extent, a relatively unequal relationship,
Yes.
but also like I don't think that makes it any less like valid, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Because that's exactly how I wrote it. I very much took inspiration from my favorite characters, either Robin Hood and Much from BBC's 2006, or Arthur and Merlin.
Mm-hmm.
So
there's a very nice word that I think could be associated with them. It's simpatico, which means that there's elements of them that are at one. They understand each other better than anyone else, and even when there could be tension between them, perhaps. So, say if Sirius had tension with Edgar, the argumentative tension, the standoffish one, there may be a side of Edgar that might think he's wrong, but another side that fights against it. So I think that's a great angle to look at a relationship like that, is how are they the same, and even when the moments when they are not.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. You have more to add to that?
No, not really. I mean, is that kind of how you looked at it? Did you see elements of their relationship that was
It's funny.
that was very well tuned, or do you find them complete? Or do you
It's
find opposites a sort of opposites attract situation?
It is a little bit because Sirius, to me, when I think of Sirius, I think of someone who's very much. I would describe Sirius as Edgar's logical brain to his very impulsive heart.
Hmm.
And
That's very good.
and that's how I look at them. It's like a Sherlock and Watson situation. Sherlock's got, the brains, and so which would, and Watson is that heart. There is something about that. So not that Edgar is stupid, but there are moments I think where the character's so impulsive and he needs Sirius to be like, okay, is this really the smartest decision?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because I say so, and then he ultimately pays for it. So that's kind of how I look at them, and that kind of leads into Edgar is our neurodivergent autistic protagonist for Ternanok. He's a king, he's a soldier, he's an older brother, and he's got a lot of responsibility. Jack, how do you hope people will relate to Edgar through your performances, given maybe you bring a little bit of your own experiences to the role?
I think audiences will definitely identify with the impulsive part. I think they'll definitely understand. I think they'll definitely identify with the whole thing of not being able to fully understand or control your feelings, and therefore your actions. So I think that's definitely something, is the fallibility. I think fallible characters are always more compelling and more relatable and more interesting to watch or listen to in this case than a character who has things a bit more worked out for themselves. People who are comfortable in their own skin are very magnetic in real life, whereas people who are fallible for whatever reason are much more interesting in fiction.
Mm-hmm. And the second part is, given Edgar is neurodivergent in a way that's a little more, I hate to use the word, he's highly vocal. I'm going to use that instead because I don't believe in functioning labels and there's not a better word for it. But he's on the much more vocal end of the spectrum. He's able to do a lot of things on his own. How did that make you feel portraying a character that isn't just autistic, but is also an active part of the story?
Sorry, could you just say that again? It just cut out very slightly on my end.
Oh, it's okay. It's all right. I just simply asked. Edgar's a little bit more vocal. I mean, he's a highly vocal
Yeah.
autistic individual. How did it make you feel portraying a character that isn't just autistic but is also an active part of the story, and really contributes?
Very, very good. I really like that. I think that there's a lot of autistic characters are portrayed. There's starting to be some stereotypes around it, where in one instance they're the super brain, or in some instances they're the highly closed off people.
Right.
But there's something about this character that's very out there and there's a great deal of charisma, and I really enjoy that, and I think that is there's a very unique flavor to this type of character who is on the spectrum, and I think that's a very good point to hammer in there, is that autistic people aren't this and they're not that. They can be something you've not ever experienced, or something you've not ever expected before.
100%. Yeah.
Much better and much more progressive than, let's say, autistic savant stereotypes,
Yep.
reaffirming that they are indeed a surgeon.
Yeah. Oh,
For people who are listening for this in like the
yeah.
future,
God.
yeah, go up and write the good doctor. I am a surgeon. Yeah, or don't, or save yourself that.
Yeah, please, God help me. And which is why I make it. I get it. It's because I was so tired. I was like, wonderful strides have been made for autistic girls with Ellie McNoll's series. I've fallen in love with that author and what she's done, and of course Jessica as well is paving the way, I think, for boys on the spectrum as well. But before I knew about her book, I was like, well, what are we doing for the boys on the spectrum who I knew growing up who were nothing like what you're trying to write on this screen? And it angered me, which is why I wrote Jacob and I wrote Edgar, because I was like, okay, we're done. My turn. and I was like, here, I'm gonna find actually autistic men on the spectrum. I don't care what age you are, but it's time that we finally, open some doors for them too. So that was I agree with you very much, John. And this next question will go to you. Is how do you think Sirius understands Edgar's disability or what makes him different? It's not explicitly stated because of the era, although I think in the Sins of the Past arc we do mention that he's autistic. But what are some things that helped you to enhance your performances and bring compassion that are present in your acting choices when you are recording?
So very practically, to introduce parts of myself to people who haven't said before, I am autistic. I am autistic. I have ADHD. I am diagnosed with those. Great fun, as well as depression and anxiety disorders as well.
Welcome to the club. You're a month.
Yeah, no, but very specifically, I was not late diagnosed, but like late teen diagnosed, which in the UK meant I was diagnosed at about the age of 14 or 15, just before GCSEs, which is later than is usually diagnosed, basically because I got loads of the tests and things you get, which are supposed to detect how good you are at school in the UK, don't account for neurodivergence, and therefore I was getting lower scores than everyone said I should be getting on the tests because of everything around. So so you very much, before I even found out, before I even had the diagnosis, I was very specifically feeling like I am trying so hard and nothing works and everyone is mad at me because they feel I'm not reaching some invisible bar that no one has told me about. And I feel like there's part of that with whenever you have serious thinking about Edgar, there's like he's striving for something. He wants like he can't reach, like there's never going to be a way to reach like total understanding with everyone in the world. But I also think for Sirius, like that's also part, like the parts of Edgar that he loves. It's passion and its drive, and I think he accepts they're part of them. He wishes they weren't so much of him, but they're also they're important parts of everyone, and that's the thing, is everyone is different. And so I think that's part of it, that rather than like associating with specific labels, which we don't which weren't written, I can't remember, but very specifically the idea that no, this is Edgar and he loves Edgar. So it doesn't matter what different parts are of him.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I was rambling.
It does. It's okay. I welcome rambles here. I go off on tangents all the time, and that's here. Jack can tell you. So the next one is aimed again at the both of you. I'm curious, given you've been voicing Sirius and Edgar since 2021, but before Tunanok revealed some of their backstories, did you come up with backstories of your own for the characters and their actions, and what's that process like?
I didn't really. I kind of went off of what was fact. because that is enough for you to gain a sense of how this person feels. I think you've done a very good job with your writing to make it clear what what the story is, and who this person is, what they're going through, how they feel, and almost with that, there's not too much ambiguity. So I didn't feel it necessary on my part. I just read it and thought, okay, I have everything I need. So I don't want to be that guy that says, no, I don't do that. But
Not enough.
I did, but I did for this, but I did with reason. There are some characters who I don't come up with a backstory to because they don't necessarily need it for me, and I do for others just because there is ambiguity. Whereas with this, there's a Shakespearean quality to it in that there's no subtext. There's a lot of it's quite out there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
'Cause, I always get so this is probably, I think, one of the biggest leaps of trust for me is handing off my work to somebody else and going, I hope you like it. Because I've had people tell me that my characters weren't relatable and that my writing was probably the worst thing they've ever read. So,
what do they know, eh?
They are very obviously not very well read. I'm just saying, everyone, read The Eye of Argon. It is the most horrific thing you have ever read. It is specifically, for those who don't know, it is like a nerd drinking game of how far can you get without mispronouncing or auto-correcting it. It is an amazing piece of literature. Amazing as in it literally creates... I don't know, but yeah. So what I'm saying is, it is in no way ever... Your work is great. Let's rework it like that. Yeah. Also, everyone read some really bad things submitted to a magazine in the 1980s, and Facebook is definitely better than that. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. So my next question: what has been your favorite part of voicing the characters like Sirius and Edgar? Have either of you done anything like Tiernanak to this skill before? And is there anything in your characters that you found yourselves relating to?
So sorry. So the question is.
Go ahead. I can repeat because my brain went.
Yeah, please do. Sorry. Yeah, please do. Sorry.
You're also breaking up a little bit, Faith. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm aware. I don't have headphones that I can plug into this device, and so if you need me to repeat anything, don't be afraid to ask.
Cool.
Well, you sound a bit clearer now, so
yeah.
Can you repeat that question?
Yes, 100%. So, what has your favorite part been of voicing characters like Sirius and Edgar? Have you done anything like Tiernanak to this scale before? And is there anything in your characters that you found yourself relating to?
My favorite part is how playful it can be, and also how intense it can get, which can be hard to record when I'm at home with everyone who I live with. So I tend to sometimes go in my garage, and that's quite nice because because you can barely hear the cars. But also I can allow myself to be a lot more playful and a lot more allow myself to just go head first into some of the more charged scenes. And as for things I've done like this before, yeah, I've done some voice stuff before, especially in the last few years, because that's when I got some decent microphone equipment, and I really enjoy it. It's so much fun is voice work, and it allows you to use your imagination, I think, a lot more than theatre and film in some way.
I really I really agree with Jack. The idea of that voice can there's so many different ways you can do things. It's why one of the things I get really passionate about is when big voiced projects etc. do not use specific voice actors, because there are so many movies that you watch and you go, I know you needed people for the draw, but like for the celebrity draw, but really there are so many people who do this better than them. And also coming from a background that I lived and worked in Japan, where like there's an entire studio system based around voice actors, people who are famous for doing only their voice. So the idea of like emphasizing that I always thought was really important. And also I've either lived alone or with my partner who has already put up with enough of my silly voices, so I don't think anyone really minds, apart from my neighbors. But then again, most of my neighbors until recently spoke Japanese, so I don't think they could understand what I was saying regardless.
Right. Do either of you have a favorite scene from the story you've gotten to record, and what part of it do you would bring to life?
It's a little hazy right now, but there's a dream sequence I quite liked in an episode. I hope you can fill in the specifics. But wasn't there a dream scene where Edgar was seeing? No, it was a chase scene. There was a chase scene associated with it. Sorry, my
No, I remember the chase scene. I remember the chase scene.
Yeah. I like chase scenes because you get to just sit down and just do lots of heavy.
Yeah.
But you just sat down.
I'm recording, I promise. You can cut that if you want, don't worry.
No, you're fine. That's funny as all get out. I think that wasn't it the chase sequence. Was it the one where Edgar gets branded, or was it the one where like Lord Ardor, who's is the god of Edgar's like fire powers, like kind of like comes down and like freaks him out a little bit?
God of the fire powers.
God of the fire. It was Ardor. It was the Ardor scene. That sequence was cool.
Yeah, I really liked that one. I think that was probably my favorite. When you asked that question, it's like, instantly. Oh yeah, I enjoyed doing that.
That was a cool sequence because we kind of got to see like the divines like being like, oh, you've already been branded, but that sucks. I was gonna do something worse to you. What about you, John?
I think I have to go like all the way back to like the beginning, and because that's my favorite. I think series 2 really sold out. No, but I really like the scene with I can't remember where Sirius is talking to Edgar in the coma, like very specifically, like it's a very quiet scene. It's literally, it's just me, so therefore it's amazing. But no, it gives you so much opportunity as an actor to just feel and fill in the space and just like do so much, and just it was such a lovely scene, and I loved reading it and I loved performing it. Faith.
Yeah. Of course. So next question: the series has official art of the characters drawn by me, but I'm curious. How do you imagine them in your minds when you're recording, or even when you went to audition? Because I really tried not to give you details about them so that you wouldn't try to put a kind of voice to match the art. So I am kind of curious. What do Edgar and Sirius look like in your minds?
Edgar looks any of you watch Attack on Titan?
Yes.
Yes. I've read it. It's extremely historically problematic. I'm an expert in Japanese history. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I've only my friends only just show me it now, and I kind of see how Eren looks in the latest season. Is kind of what I sort of pictured.
That's cool. I will have to.
The long hair.
The long hair,
long coats.
I will just tell you,
quite
Jack.
Sunken, strong features. Sorry, John.
That is a character who is about to and is in the process of committing genocide.
Yes, I saw. I'm caught up. Yeah.
Good. Okay, just so you know. I'm working on something to do with Attack on Titan's confusing use of historical allegory. It's not great.
See this. What about you, John?
Dante from Devil May Cry, but slightly more fancy.
Ooh, I like that.
There you go.
All right. So this is our
You can also cut out. Sorry, you can also cut out the thing about the history of Attack on Titan.
no.
That one is baby. There are lots of angry people on the internet. I already have to argue with neo Nazis occasionally.
No, it's okay.
What
You're
have
fine.
I done? What have I unleashed?
I love you two so much.
I was doing a podcast on Japanese history and I got called out by a Western professor who now lives in Japan and writes for like the Japanese equivalent of Fox News.
Oh my god.
Saying this is awful, whatever. And I looked him up and he writes all kinds of things, basically denying comfort women and the war crimes of the Japanese army during World War II. And so I'm like, oh, great. I don't have to listen to any opinions that you have because they're all rubbish.
Wow. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, no, that's my frame of other work that isn't acting. Somehow filled with more problematic people than the world of acting.
No kidding. So last question. For those who obviously don't know, that we did mention this at the start, Jack and John are based in the UK. If the accent didn't give it away, we all record the show remotely in our own homes. So I'm curious, for the two of you, how tough is it to record remotely and often by yourself in a booth? Is there ever a thought that you haven't landed the emotions right for a scene? Because in essence, we're kind of doing video game booth sessions, minus the fact that I tell these two, hey, don't do it all at once. Do they listen? Sometimes.
I find it hard to not be very self-critical when you're doing when you're doing stuff on your own. When you're recording on your own, I find it very difficult. And that's something that I'm trying to step back from, is stop focusing on how something sounds. Just get the thoughts in, and then the voice, everything else will come in afterwards. I've just recorded something this afternoon that I try not to dwell on too long on my delivery. So I find it a bit difficult, but it can be a lot of fun as well. It is always, there's something quite, it's a good thing to, it's a good way to keep in practice in a non-collaborative way. It's always, I love being collaborative with people when acting, but when you're alone recording on your own, I think there's a part of you that lets loose a bit more, but there's also that part that's a bit more. You said that line in a really weird way, and you should feel bad about it, Jack. You silly person.
I did. I do want to say that, like, I wish that I could sit in and direct you guys, because that was. But I knew with having so many people on so many different sides of the world, I would have to settle either for we have a conversation and I explain to you things, or we try to figure out a way that I can sit down with you one on one if you really need it.
Sorry, I'm just getting flashbacks to what was. It was a totally different project, but it was a project I was getting paid for, so I felt like I couldn't say anything to them. But I had something like 20, 30 lines. Ooh. And this 20, 30 lines. And they had me do a solo set for like 4 hours whilst they were on call with me, telling me just, no, do that line slightly more like this, slightly more like that, slightly more like this. We'll come back to that line later. No. And it is the most anti-creative thing I have ever felt in my life.
No. So I'll tell you.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you go ahead first, John.
So very much for this, I really liked how much trust you gave us, Faith, to looking at the characters. But then I also was like, a lot of the time I record it and then I try to listen to it as little as possible. Yeah. And I trust you that I just send the takes to you and you go, if you'd like another one of any of these, let me know. I can do it. I can do it like that. But like, it's not up for me to judge my own acting. Thank Christ.
And let me say this too. So like I have had a couple of rare sessions where I've been able to sit in on booth recordings. I directed the my friend Jordan O'Neill, who played Malachi Faust in season 1. He played my dad, and I've also directed the actor who played Aaron for seasons 1 and half of season 2. And my way is that it's more of a collaborative process. It's like I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna listen and I'm gonna let you do your thing, unless I feel and then I'll give you subtle direction, Neil Druckmann style. Okay, what are you thinking? And then let's see. Like, let's try. Or I think I remember one time when Jordan was giving me a line, and I was like, that's fun. Give me more sass on that. And it's stuff like that. Instead of me going, no, do it like this, do it like this. It's like that was funny. Let's lean into that a little bit more. Like, I want to encourage you to actually go after stuff just a little bit more. So my style of directing is a little bit different. But I've also studied people like Andrea Romano. So I want to pull your performance out, not inhibit you.
But also your writing is very good at informing the actor of like the energy. Like the scripts are well written in that, okay, I do know what emotion I'm coming into the scene with. I know how it progresses. I know where it ends up. Like, so you can kind of chart that as you go through. Like
100%. Okay, so we've come to the end of our questions, but we do have a little bit of a special thing that we're gonna read today. So you guys were given a 3-page script, and once again, you don't worry if it's perfect. Don't worry about the flubs. Don't worry about any of that, or what have you. Let's just jump at it. And I'll read like the stage directions and stuff like that. Let me get to it because I sent it to you guys. And let my device open it. And I'll read the stage directions and the little brief side character, and then just let me know when you have that queued up.
I have it in front of me.
I got it.
Good. All right. So we are going to read a scene from a future season. Quarreling boyfriends, Edgar and Sirius make up after a falling out.
Ah.
Sweet.
It's fun. Okay, so location: the Vampire Kingdom of Nocturne. The year is 1790, and Edgar and Sirius have just had an argument last night that has left Sirius quite fuming and piping angry with Edgar. Edgar, on the other hand, having been the instigator of the argument, is coming to sincerely apologize. So we're in the interior, the Mage's Clan living compound, early morning. Sirius is in the arcane library reading up on his studies of the magical arts in one of many tomes available to him. One of his fellow mages, Almer, enters the study and stands at the ready. Altum Divinos Auberon?
Alma, can you see I'm currently preoccupied? Unless there's something urgent to attend to, please leave me to my studies.
Of course, sir. Typically I would so. I hope you'll pardon my intrusion, but the king has stepped into your personal chambers and is seeking an audience with you.
Sorry,
Yeah.
are you reading the stage directions?
Sorry, I forgot to bold it. Sirius slams the book shut and grows enraged, and saying a gust of air magic on accident, blowing out a series of lit candles in the room and startling Almer.
Oh, is he? He's seeking an audience with me?
Yes?
Well, you can tell at the miserable oath I have other affairs which require my attention, and if he'd so much as like to see me, he should bloody well.
Ask you himself?
Edgar walks up a flight of marble-covered carved stairs into the little study area of the arcane library. He looks exhausted as he pushes past Almer, gesturing for him to leave.
Leave us.
And Almer, without a second thought or even a word, does so quickly, tripping as he slams the library door behind him. Edgar and Sirius are now the only souls in the room, and Edgar, nervously and cautiously, approaches Sirius.
Well, I see you just let yourself in anywhere.
You do realize that I'm the king, and well...
Oh, knock it off with the nonsense. What do you want, you bull-headed imbecile?
He slams his arcane defensive tome on top of several other books with a thud and begins clearing away the table of his belongings in front of him, packing them away in his satchel. What the hell? Edgar folds his arms and leans against the bookshelf for half a second.
Whew, cheeky now, aren't we? You know, I would really watch that fiery words, love.
Now piss off, you bloody knob.
Wow, just, uh, no, sorry. I really don't have a comeback for that.
Well, bloody damn bully for you. Now, if you haven't got anything useful to say to me, why don't you go crawl into the sea, your royal highness?
Edgar storms up to him as Sirius slings the satchel over his shoulder and turns around, only to come face to face with Edgar. They're about the same height, so they're able to make eye-level contact with each other, and for a moment or two of silence, they look at one another. The anger and tension in the air is thick and intense.
Look, I came here because what I said to you and how I acted was...
A cock-up. Bloody stupid and utter tosh.
Yeah, that. And a whole other load of bollocks that I owe you an apology for. And it's... I'll spend the rest of my days making it up to you.
Really? And you think, just like that, you'll come crawling in here the night after you've said, and it's all sugar and the apple tarts?
No, I don't. No, hang it all a bloody minute.
Sirius cuts him off, hand on his hip. He furrows his eyebrows at Edgar and glowers at him.
Cockwomble. You think, let me just walk in and those ridiculous, eternally boyish charms will just sweep me off my feet? Nah! Like I'm some daft, love-struck prince.
You're a prince to me when you're not trying to bite my head off.
Prince, you must have hit your head against the door, love. I'm nothing but the lowly orphan scum of some dead urchin. A pauper's son, I don't doubt it.
Edgar shakes his head no, leans up against the table, looking Sirius's way, saddened.
Well, if I fell for a pauper's son, I should be the luckiest vampire in the entire land. Because for all the cock-ups and shite and idiotic things I say, do, and sometimes most definitely mean, the one thing I love more than all the riches of this world is you.
End scene. That was wonderful. Thank you guys so much. And that is it for our show. Thank you so much, really, for being my guest, for celebrating this 4 years with me. Be very honest, I adore Edgar and Sirius, and the fact that you two brought them to life is just a joy to me.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Of course. Yeah. You're welcome, and thank you for coming on with me. Have a good evening, you guys, and I will I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Yep.
And to all a good night.
Ho ho ho.
Bye.
We are recording this in May, by the way.
Yes.
'Tis the season.
God. This is what I put up with. See, this is what I've been putting up with the last 4 years. Oh, I will talk with you two later. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So are we doing a proper bye? Yeah.
Yep, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for having us again.
You're welcome.